Hey, it's Mark Strigl from Talking Metal and Talking Rock, and I am here with Victor Ruiz from Ear Peeler and Mars Attacks and Galaxy of Geeks. How are you, Victor?
I'm doing good, Mark. How are you?
I am great, and we are going to talk to you guys about new music that has come out recently. We are recording this at the end of March 2018, and let's start with the big one, which I know both of us want to talk about. I mean, Judas Priest, Firepower, a real return to form for these guys on this record. I think they really delivered the goods, and I've spoken about it pretty extensively on the Talking Metal podcast, and I wanted to hear your opinion on the new Judas Priest record, Victor.
Love the album. It's crazy because for the longest time I've been wanting them to return to form and put something out like this. And it's funny because for the longest time I kept saying Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Kiss, and Metallica need to work with Andy Sneap. And that's based
I
on,
remember you saying that like years ago. I think when you were doing a guest spot on Talking Metal, you definitely
yeah,
absolutely said that at least once.
yeah, because I mean, just look at what he's done with Testament, with Accept, and with a bunch of other bands, and he seems to be a guy that really hones in on what made bands great. I remember reading an article with when he worked with Megadeth, and I'm surprised Megadeth only did one album with him, because he essentially made Mustaine and whoever was in the band at the time. He said, "Look, pull out the albums that influenced you, that made you want to play guitar, that inspired you to write, Peace Cells and to write this, that, and the other thing." And he is, from what I recall, he said, listen to those albums ad nauseum for a week, then come back to me and let's discuss, the tracks. And
Totally.
I think with all of the bands involved, especially Metallica and Maiden, and even Kiss, who's had Paul Stanley doing the production, having someone from the outside, not letting the inmates run the asylum per se, I think would get a much better, more cohesive album out of them. And the Priest album shows. I know you're a fan of the last album. I I like the songs, but I just don't like the guitar sound. For
Yeah,
example, I
I'm
don't
not.
like.
I'm not a big fan of the Redeemer record. I mean, I was so on that. I really loved. I mean, it's going back a number of years at this point. I thought Angel of Retribution was a great record. Nostradamus. Some people love it. Most people don't. I have to say I kind of fall in the don't category. Although I haven't
Right.
listened to it in many years. But yeah, all that aside, this just blows all those records out of the water and
Yeah.
returns them to their best record, potentially since Painkiller, for sure.
Yeah. No doubt. And the thing with this album, just the songs, the quality of the songs. Where I remember listening to it one time through and hearing "No Surrender," and I couldn't get the song out of my head. I had to go
Catchy.
back and listen to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some real hooks.
And yeah, and that's the thing that I think a lot of the other albums were missing. Like, I think as good as Angel of Retribution was, it was kind of a paint by numbers Priest album, in the sense that we need a song that sounds like Painkiller. We need a song that sounds like
Yeah,
British Steel, and they were pulling from different eras and almost trying to appease everyone. And it's a good album. But I think this album, really, I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, wow, I listened to it, and for me, the trinity of Judas Priest is Painkiller, Defenders of the Faith, and Screaming for Vengeance. And this is maybe the first album that I've listened to in a very long time by them, to think, wow, could this be like inching up on those albums? Because I keep listening to it over and over again, where the other albums have had tracks here and there. There's things off of Turbo and Ram It Down that I really like. There's even stuff off of the Ripper albums that I really like. But this album really, I start to listen to it and I want to listen to the entire thing. It's like, all right, well, I only want to listen to Spectre. But I listen to Spectre, and then before I know it, I'm at the end of the album. All right, I want to listen to the whole thing over again. It's just one of those things where it's really captivated me. And I've read reviews out there, people saying, "Oh, it's too heavy. It really isn't. What I expected. I wanted another album like Stained Class, or I wanted another album. It's obviously not everyone's going to be happy. I'm happy, and I think this is the closest we've gotten to all these albums that we're mentioning.
Right, right. And let's move on. But you had asked me in an email if there was a track or two that I didn't think it was as strong as the others, and just to answer you in person, because since I never replied, Flamethrower to me is the weak link on the record.
Yeah,
Just my. I feel like they could have easily left that one off. It's a good song. It's not a great song like the rest of the record.
yeah, I agree with you on that.
Cool. So, Victor, what else are you listening to real quick here? There's been a lot of new music coming out. Any other titles you want to throw at the viewers of the show here?
Yeah, I've been enjoying the Stone Temple Pilots album. I
Okay.
know that it's received mixed reviews. I do think that the tracks "Roll Me Over" and "Meadow" are among the better songs that they've ever released. I mean, I guess I'm more lenient than a lot of other people when it comes to the band, given some of the reviews that I've read. There have been other things that I posted in the new releases that have kind of jumped out at me. There's a British band called Black Moth, which I thought is what I've heard of the album sounds pretty cool. It's Sabbath with soaring female vocals. It
Cool.
sounds really cool to me, um, and that album has really stood out.
The Sword you mentioned, right?
The
Before we
Sword,
started
yeah.
recording, you were talking
Thanks.
about the Sword. Yeah, no problem.
the, the Sword album, I think the Sword is a band that was pigeonholed as being a stoner band, and I think if you really listen to their discography, they've really progressed and tried a lot of different things over the years. Like 3 albums ago, they started mixing in keyboards, and not like Hammond keyboards either. It's not like your
Right.
typical Sabbath type keyboards. It's a lot more like 80s type keyboard. So it's
Right.
it's an interesting mix of what they're doing, and I think it's cool for a band that could have, after opening up for Metallica and being on Guitar Hero and this and that,
Right.
they could have just kept doing what they were doing, 10 years ago, but they, even while they were at their peak of their popularity, they started switching up gears and doing different things. So
Right on.
I think the new album, if you're a fan of the band, it's definitely pretty cool to check out.
Cool. And speaking of keyboards, the new Turbonegro record, which I feel like really didn't get any press at all and was totally off of everyone's radar. I mean, I'm a fan of that band, and it was like 3 weeks after it came out, I was like, "Oh, holy shit! There's a new Turbonegro record out." It is, and it's good. It's good. It's called Rock and Roll Machine. I'm not an expert on this band. I've always liked their music and the classic records from the 2000s, and maybe even going back to the late 90s. They've always
Yeah.
delivered some great stuff, and they've always been overlooked. They replaced their singer a number of years ago, and they, I know, put a record out with the newer singer that didn't really grab me that much when it came out, whatever it was. I don't even know, 4 or 5 years ago. But the new record is called Rock and Roll Machine, and let me tell you, I think this is somewhat of a return to form for them. It brings back the celebrated Turbo Negro sounds of the past, and also includes some more like almost like cheesy '80s Night Flight Orchestra keyboard sounds and songwriting styles thrown
Cool.
in there. So it's not just that like punk metal aggression. You get that, but you also get some almost pop stuff on there. It's if you were a fan back in the day, it's well worth a listen. Rock and Roll Machine. I'm definitely enjoying it. And another record that is on the way. I actually got a link of it the other day. I don't think it's out quite yet, but it will be in a few weeks or less. The new Ross the Boss record is
Oh,
great, classic, authentic metal no sampled drum triggers, no nothing. It sounds like they got in a room, which the way I understand it, they did, and they plugged in and they played. It is called As Blood Sworn, and if you're just a guy who loves that classic Manowar metal sound, this is going to be right up your alley. Mike LaPond on bass. They have a new singer joining them on this one, and it's essentially a new solo band for Ross the Boss, or at least this is their first time recording a record together. And it's great stuff. It's really good. There's some real catchy songs on there. I know Mike LaPond actually participates in the songwriting, so he's a real, what's the word, important part of this record by Ross the Boss. Again, By Blood Sworn by Ross the Boss. Check it out. And I guess that'll about do it, unless you have any other quick ones you want to throw in there, Victor.
I think we pretty much touched on all the ones that I'm comfortable with talking
Right.
about that I've listened to enough.
Real quick, the new Monster Magnet, do you check that out?
I only listened to the 2 singles. I need to jump into that.
Yeah.
Similar to you, I receive a ton of different demos, or not demos, excuse me, download links. So I try to get to everything, but sometimes it's close to impossible.
Yeah, wasn't overly impressed by that. Kind of a paint by, the first single was kind of a paint by numbers Monster Magnet song, which I thought sounded fine, but it seems like they're kind of out of ideas. That was my overall opinion of the record.
Yeah, I like that. That's a title track, Mindfucker. The song was cool, like you're saying. It's your typical Monster Magnet 60s influence, the twinge of psychedelic, rock there. Was all right. I mean, honestly, Monolithic is the last great album that I think that they've released. Monolithic just had a lot of hooks, had a lot of really cool songs back to back, and everything since then has had 1 or 2 maybe cool tracks, and then everything else is, I don't know, just a little too trippy and drony for me.
Yeah, and it's like bands like that, they don't need to do a full record. Just release a song here and there. There's just no point of it in today's market, and it's almost better. It's like less is more. You if they would have just released that one track, I would have been way more excited than one good track and a bunch of mediocre stuff. I'm not specifically pointing the finger at them. There's a lot of bands that are doing this. If you don't have an album's worth of material, there's no reason to put out an album. I mean, this is a different day and age. Just put out a download. That's all you need to do.
Yep.
So, on that note,
I agree.
Yeah, on that note, we're gonna wrap it. Real quick, Victor, where is the best place you want people to check you out online?
If they want to get in touch with me, best place is probably Twitter, which is at VMR907. As you mentioned when we started recording, if anyone is so inclined, please check out earpeeler.com for podcasting news and updates. And I'm working on something with the guys from Decibel Geek to help out with their Rockin' Pod 2 Expo, so there will be information on that shortly.
Very cool. Yeah, we had a great time at the Rockin' Pod Expo last year. When I say we, I mean my wife and I, and John was there too. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it this year, but I look forward to getting the reports from it, and I encourage everyone to check it out because it is a fun event if you're able to make it. It's in August in Nashville, Tennessee, and it's the Rock and Pod Expo 2 this year, so definitely look into that. And Victor, thank you. That's going to do it for today. We will talk more soon. I enjoy doing these shows, so let's do another one in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.